Lydia, would you come light our chalice this morning, please? Last Thursday was National Coming Out Day, a day to support people in their own coming out processes and to celebrate people who have come out as lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, or straight allies. Some years ago, this congregation went through an extensive process to become a welcoming congregation. The designation in our denomination for a congregation welcome to all people, no matter their sexual preferences or gender identity. We know that not all places in our community, our country, or our world are as welcoming, as radically, transformationally hospitable as we want to be. Today we acknowledge Coming Out Day and remind our hearts and minds of the reality that there are still children, youth, and adults who live in fear of coming out, and that our work is not done until each person can come out safely, whether as an LGBTQ person or as a straight ally. And so on this day, we light our chalice with these words, borrowed from the Mount Vernon Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Just as Jesus taught his disciples that they should not hide their light from the world, but rather set it on a stand where it could illuminate the world, as he reminded them that a city set on a hill cannot be hidden, we light this chalice this morning in recognition and celebration that, as a welcoming congregation, we have uncovered our light and set it on a stand to illumine Denton and the surrounding area. In welcoming lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and straight people equally to our fellowship and supporting them in our communities, we set ourselves in full view up on a hill like that city. We cannot hide. We will not hide. Let us enter this sacred time and commit to this sacred work together.
Holy and beautiful is the custom which brings us together in the presence of the Most High, to face our ideals, to remember our loved ones in absence, and to give thanks, to make confession, to offer forgiveness, to be enlightened, to be strengthened. Through this quiet hour breathes the worship of ages, the cathedral music of history. 3 unseen guests attend: faith, hope, and love. Let us prepare our hearts for them. I invite you to rise as you are able and join me in singing our opening hymn, number 1051, We Thank you. Please be seated. I invite our children to come forward for our message for all ages. Good morning. So our book today is a book called One by Catherine Otoshi. Have you heard of it? No. Yay! We got a new one. Blue was a quiet color. He enjoyed looking up at the sky, floating on the waves, and on days he felt daring, splashing in rain puddles. Every once in a while, he wished he could be more sunny like yellow, or bright like green, more regal like purple, or outgoing like orange. But overall, he liked being blue, except when he was with Red. Red was a hothead. He liked to pick on Blue. Red is a great color, he'd say. Red is hot. Blue is not. Then Blue would feel bad about being blue. Sometimes yellow comforted blue. Blue is a very nice color, he'd say. But yellow never said that in front of red. She never said, "Stop picking on blue." Green, purple, and orange thought blue was nice too, but they never told red to stop either. Every time red said something mean and no one spoke up, he got bigger and bigger and bigger. Soon red grew so big that everyone was afraid of him. No one dared stop him. Red picked on all the colors. Then everyone felt a little blue. Until one came. He had a different shape with bold strokes and squared corners. He was funny. He made the colors laugh. Red saw this and he got very hot. "Stop laughing," he told yellow. "Stop laughing," he told green. "Stop laughing," he told purple and orange. And they did. Red rolled up to one. "Stop laughing," he told him. But one stood straight up like an arrow and he said, "No." Red was mad. One wouldn't budge, so red rolled away. One turned to the colors and said, "If someone is mean and picks on me, I, for one, stand up and say no." Then yellow felt brave and he said, "Me too." Green agreed and then said, "Me 3. Then purple became 4 and orange became 5. Blue saw the colors change. He wanted to count. Red grew hot. He felt left out. He grew hotter and hotter and hotter. Red raced over to blue and said what he always said, "Red is hot, blue is not." But this time, blue stood up tall and became 6. "Red can be really hot," he said, "but blue can be super cool." Red blew a fuse and tried to roll over blue. But everyone took a stand and said no. Seeing them stand tall made Red feel very, very, very small. Then Red turned even redder and began rolling away. Blue called out, "Can red be hot and blue be cool?" Red stopped in his tracks. "Red can count too," said one. Red rocked and rolled and turned into 7. "Everyone counts," they shouted. Then Red laughed and joined the fun. Sometimes it takes just one. Gabriel, would you like to light our chalice this morning? Henry, will you help him? And gratitude and strength for your dad too. And we light our last candle for all those joys and concerns that we carry in our hearts but have not spoken aloud this morning. Carolyn McDade is the writer of the song Spirit of Life, which was written one evening in the midst of despair and is what she calls a prayer. It was written 30 years ago when McDade was in the midst of a strong activist spirit, feminist work, anti-nuclear arms efforts, Central American solidarity fights, gay rights. She was working hard for a lot of causes. And when you commit so much time and energy and love toward creating a better world, a tragedy like that can be a setback, or any tragedy can be a setback and send you into despair. Reverend Tom Owen Toole says that Carolyn McDade approached him and his wife Carolyn Owen Toole one day and said, "You know, I wrote that song, Spirit of Life, the night after Harvey Milk, the gay mayor of San Francisco, was assassinated. And I want to tell you, Tom and Carolyn, that song was a prayer." McDade recalled that evening that she had where she was at a Central American Solidarity event with a friend of hers, Pat. She said, when I got to Pat's house, I told her, I feel like a piece of dried cardboard that has lain in the attic for years. And if you just open wide the door, I'll be dust. I was tired, not with my community, but with the world. My friend just sat with me, and I loved her for sitting with me. Later that evening, when McDade was home, she said, I walked through my house in the dark, found my piano, and that was my prayer. May I not drop out. It was not written, but prayed. I knew more than anything that I wanted to continue in faith with the movement. Tom Owen Toole says it was a prayerful anthem to mystical activism. He urges us never forget how and where and why she wrote it, and never forget that it is a prayer. As an act of prayer, I invite you to hold what is heavy in your heart today, to hold the burdens of our community and our world. Let us hold every child, youth, and adult who cannot come out right now. Let us hold those who are bullied. Let us even hold those who bully as we pray together, number 123 in your gray hymnal, Spirit of Life. Our reading this morning is a poem called Benediction that was adapted by Reverend Sarah Barbara Braun. I do not pray for your safety, for often safety is the way of no risk and no growth, the way of slow stagnation. I pray you rather courage that is poised before all realities. I pray you humor, born of humility, and the grace to be honest with your own foibles. I pray you confidence in your own worth, a worthiness not betrayed by failings or by success. I pray you gratitude for life's great blessing. And most of all, I pray you a passionate yearning for justice, for love, for joy. In an anthology called Dear Bully, one of the contributing authors, Claudia Gable, shares a story about Frances Doyle, a girl from her high school class who from behind she says, "You'd swear is a boy." Baggy pants that hang low off her straight hips, button-down shirt with sleeves rolled up to the elbows, short blonde hair that gets trimmed with an electric razor at the barbershop every other Tuesday. But from the front, there's no mistaking it. Frances Doyle is most certainly a girl. Pink pouty lips and long full eyelashes that make the senior queen bees jealous. Small but delicate ears that are pierced from the lobe all the way up to the cartilage at the top. If only she'd wear a dress, or high-heeled boots, or a tight V-neck sweater to school, things would be a whole lot easier. But Frances never does, and it's pretty obvious why. Although I can't say for sure because she and I have never really spoken before. Actually, I don't think I've ever heard her say anything to anyone. Not to answer a question in history class, or to make a joke to one of her friends at the lunch table. Gable goes on to share an encounter that happened in the hall when between classes, boys come out of nowhere to tease her, to taunt her with sexual innuendo, use derogatory language. They touch her, they surround her, they intimidate her. I've taken out the exact text from the story because I think it was too much for a Sunday morning. But I will include what Gable's experience was while all of that was going on. She writes, "My heart feels like it is being drilled by the beak of a woodpecker. I pray for the next bell to sound. That will scatter Bruce and his friends like a horde of roaches. I doubt any of them want to get written up. They're always in trouble for something, but never for this. I don't think Frances has ever turned them in. She must believe what everyone else does. Tattling on these losers will make the target on your back 10 times bigger." Frances opens her locker and grabs a spiral-bound notebook. I can't help but notice the display of photos on the inside door, pictures of Frances with her arm draped over another girl, both of them smiling radiantly. They actually kind of look alike. And from the grins on their faces, you can tell they're really happy. What's so freaking wrong with that? When Frances shuts the locker and turns around, Ted slaps the notebook out of her grasp, amusing the chuckleheads that surround him. My skin feels white hot as I watch Frances reach for the notebook and hear Taylor cackling while he kicks it down the hall. The notebook lands at the tips of my red patent leather ballet flats. Everyone else keeps moving along as though nothing out of the ordinary is happening. Someone even plants a Converse sneaker on the notebook, tearing out a couple of scribbled on pages. I know what I should do. Take a deep breath and pick up the notebook. Go over to Frances and offer to walk her to class. I don't even have to acknowledge Bruce and his gang of idiots. We can exit this horrible situation gracefully. In fact, our female solidarity may be so awe-inspiring that the hearts of those homophobes may grow 3 times their size, just like in How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Then I feel Frances and her glistening, sad eyes on me. I can't move. I'm not even sure if I'm breathing, that's how still I am. There's no doubt that she's talking to me for the very first time. She's asking me for help, and I want to. I really want to. But I'm afraid. 100% frozen solid with fear. I'm ashamed to admit this, but I don't want to give anyone a reason to attack me. I'm not as strong as Frances, who shoves past Bruce amid a barrage of insults that would rip through my heart like a fishing knife. When she steps in front of me, her neck is completely flushed and her lips are tightened to a thin line, like she's stopping herself from screaming. Instead, Frances bends down and retrieves her notebook, then silently stalks off to the bathroom, the only place where she can escape the taunting. Bruce starts first starts fist bumping his pals, but then the bell sounds and cuts their celebration short. They dart off in different directions, still howling with laughter. The hallway is empty, but I'm still a thick flock of ice. So here's your choice, I think. I could sneak off to the principal's office without anyone seeing me. Or I could pop into the bathroom and ask Frances if she's okay. I go back and forth in my mind for a long time. When my legs are finally able to move, they take me directly to Mr. Caldwell's math class. He gives me a tardy slip as I stroll in. I tuck the piece of paper in my pocket, sit down at my desk, quiet as a mouse. I am a coward. That's all there is to it. Scary thing is, I'll have a chance to redeem myself once class is over, and 8 more opportunities tomorrow, and the day after that, the day after that, and the day after that. I want to resent this author for her story, for her silence, but I know that she was scared. Middle school and high school can be so unforgiving, so cruel, and who willingly would step out and make themselves vulnerable? What should the author have done in this story? Go to the principal, go to Frances. What would you do? I do not pray for your safety, for often safety is the way of no risk and no growth, the way of slow stagnation. I pray you rather courage that is poised before all realities. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is standing up against hatred, when standing up carries so much risk. It's hard to be the one when there is only one. A couple of weeks ago, anti-abortion extremists came to First Unitarian Church of Dallas and picketed senior pastor Daniel Cantor's role on the Greater Texas Planned Parenthood Board. They stood on the sidewalk outside the church and yelled at children as they were coming to church with words I will not repeat here. Reverend Cantor asked the group to please be civil. Congregation members brought donuts and coffee to protesters in an act of radical hospitality. Bullying is done by people of all ages. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is about stepping out past your own fear, extending a hand when your emotions are trying to shut down, standing up like in the message for all ages, even when you aren't sure whether anyone will stand up with you. When I was in Phoenix this past summer for our Unitarian Universalist Association's annual General Assembly, I was standing vigil with other Unitarian Universalists, witnessing to the inhumanity of the sheriff's tent city jail, set up to hold undocumented people in what was that week 110-degree heat. The practices of the jail are to humiliate and belittle inmates. As we filed into the area outside the jail, we were faced with heavily armed militia, people yelling at us, people spewing hate at us. We followed the instructions we received on the bus ride over. Do not make eye contact, keep walking, and keep singing. We were instructed to keep singing over and over the meditation on breathing that we sometimes sing here. Breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is about offering a prayer when everything inside you is shaking or crumbling or stiff. I think of Carolyn McDade, our songwriter of Spirit of Life, writing from her despair and hopelessness. Harvey Milk had been killed, an icon of gay rights, with many activists wondering what progress can be seen in the wake of that kind of tragedy. For what have we worked? Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. What if we draw on our spiritual resources in these moments of fear? Ask God for help. Connect with your best self, or the best part of your human spirit. Lean into the interdependent web of existence of which we are all a part. Detach from suffering. What if we pray? What if we sing? What if we meditate? Whatever you need to do in that moment to listen deeply to who you are meant to be, how you are meant to be. To let yourself move past those intense emotional responses and to connect to something deeper, something liberating. I think of the author of this story about being in high school. I think about this self-identified coward whose icy brick posture froze her stuck in place for so long. And I wish for her wings to set her free. I think from that place of freedom, we know what to do. What if in that moment she let herself pray or sing? What if she could get in touch with her best self in that moment? What then might she have done differently? What would Jesus do when faced with a girl under assault? What would Jesus do when picketers are yelling at children outside of a church on Sunday morning? I pray you humor, born of humility, and the grace to be honest with your own foibles. When I was 5 years old, my parents enrolled me in gymnastics, and I was an incredibly happy 5-year-old. I loved being in gymnastics, everything about it. I loved the smell of the gymnasium, the feel of the leather on the equipment, the hanging and the balancing. I loved the leotard. I joyfully anticipating advancing to each new piece of equipment, one after the other, until one day when my teacher told me that I was doing very well, but that I would be too tall to be successful as a gymnast. Now, I might have been tall, but I was only 5. So how tall could I have been for her to have this insight already? But it broke my heart. I wasn't there to be a professional gymnast. I'm not sure I even knew what that meant. But I loved being there. But I heard the discouragement and I stopped taking gymnastics. Years later, when I was about 11, I started taking ice skating lessons. And I found that joy that I had found in gymnastics. I loved the rink, I loved the icy air on my face. I loved skating fast and spinning and gliding. I advanced through all the badges until all I could do was private lessons. I was guided toward ice dancing because it was determined that no one who starts so old could be successful in figure skating. So I learned ice dancing. And one day my teacher asked me where I wanted to go with it. You're very good, you pick up things very quickly, but you're so tall, we'd never find you a partner tall enough to pair with you. So I stopped. And I started taking dance classes, ballet, tap, and jazz. I started going to workshops, I started student teaching. I was a painfully shy kid growing up who had a hard time expressing herself. and dance gave me the opportunity to express myself through movement. I entered a fine arts program in college where I could concentrate in dance. I auditioned for company my first year, and I was told that I was very good, the best technique in my class, strong, expressive, but I would need to lose weight to be in the company. Audition again next year. So I put myself on a 1,500 calorie a day diet. I continued my dance classes. And one day in class, my teacher said, "You know, Pam, your height is a problem. You'll need to bend your knees deeper if you're going to fit in the company. You cannot leap so high. You'll have to bring it down, pull your arms in more to look smaller." My teacher set out to make me smaller so that I could fit into the company the following year. That summer, I went back home and picked up dance classes at my local studio. The studio was owned by a woman who was in her 40th year of running the studio. She wasn't very tall. She was kind of heavy set. She always wore these baggy sweatpants and heavy sneakers. But on the walls of the studio were pictures of her when she was a professional dancer. She was younger in these elegant poses and tutus with her hair pulled back and arms and legs that seemed to go on forever. She rarely taught classes anymore, but she would sometimes watch, and I remember her as this firm Italian woman who always spoke her mind. She came up to me after class and she said, "You have a beautiful mind. You are so expressive, even just doing exercises at the bar, I could watch you forever. But," and in the space between that word "but" and the rest of her sentence, I beat myself up for her. I ran the tape in my head. I'm too tall, I'm too big, my feet are too wide, my ancestry too Asian. All of the tape I had, I ran in that split second. So I was absolutely, completely unprepared for her actual sentence, which was actually a question. She said, "You dance so beautifully, but I have a question for you. Why do you dance so small?" She said, "You could effortlessly leap high. You could extend your arms far. Why do you dance so small?" And with that question, I began to wonder for the first time in my life whether perhaps nothing was wrong with my body or me. And so for the rest of that summer, my teachers helped me to dance fully. And when I returned to school in this enormous outstretched body of mine, I returned knowing that I would not again audition for company. And somehow, without my doing, I got drawn into acting and readers' theater. I had never, ever, ever liked public speaking. My first acting class, I know that sounds funny now. My first acting class was awful. It didn't come easy. My teacher encouraged me to hold props in my acting assignment so that I could do something with my nervous hands. Anyway, it turned out to be just the thing I needed to be doing because I was going to be a minister one day, and it turns out the ability to speak in front of groups has probably turned out to be more helpful than being able to do a pirouette well. But I also needed this lesson of not playing small, because it wasn't just about the size of my body. It was about all the messages that I had gotten about playing small, about taking up as little room as possible, not just physically, but energetically, verbally, playing small. Some of us learn that. And some of us learn that so early and so consistently that we're old when we even notice that we're doing it. And then there's the task of undoing it, if we dare. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is in detaching from the stories about ourselves to which we cling. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is in detaching from the stories about others to which we cling. Undoing those tapes that run in our heads without our knowing. And maybe not just undo the old, horrible stories, but more importantly, affirm the truth. that love needs space to grow, that being gay or lesbian is good, that same-sex couples are beautiful, that predictable gender expectations are so 19th century. Some of us were raised being bullied at the playground or at school or in other settings, and some of us were not. Some of us were raised in homes where there was emotional, physical, or sexual abuse, and some of us were not. For some of us, learning the skill of going unnoticed was an essential and necessary skill. But at some point, we have to let that go and be as big, as energetically enormous as we are created to be. I think of Frances Doyle, this high school student, in the story that I shared. I wonder what her negative stories are. I think of the author, and then I wonder what her negative stories are. I think about the bullies. I think about the bystanders in the hall who didn't do anything. What are their negative stories? I'm too weak. I'm only one. I deserve this. I'm not good enough. If the focus is on her, it's not on me. I'm afraid of being noticed. I'm afraid of not being noticed. Beating on her makes me look strong. I'm ugly. I'm not smart. There are few theological points which I know for certain to be true, without a doubt true. And one of them is that for each child who's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who you are. Whether you are short or tall, light-skinned or dark-skinned, gay, lesbian, bisexual, whether your gender expression conforms with your sexual identity, whether you do not know yet your sexual orientation, whether your parents are legally married, whether you can be legally married, whether you are transgender, whether you are straight. That song is about every one of us in the story. I pray you confidence in your own worth, a worthiness not betrayed by failings or by success. You are precious beyond what can be measured. You are a gift beyond what you can give. Despite any other messages you might hear, there is something good in you that cannot be destroyed or taken away. And I like to believe that there is some universe who proclaims that when we are born, and proclaims that when we are sad or scared or unsure, and that if we can quiet ourselves enough, we might hear the universe singing who we are. Not who someone else thinks we are, not even who we think we are, but who you are, beloved, whole, radiant, good. I pray you gratitude for life's great blessing. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is to believe in yourself as a blessing, especially if you were trained not to. Hopefully, though, if you listen, there are people along the way who, even with a question, just a simple question, why do you dance so small, can lead you back. And so maybe you are also one of those people who could reach into another person's life and see them. See them. See them perhaps better than they see themselves, and be a mirror for them. Be the one. Affirm them. You are beautiful. You are good. You are meant for something wonderful in this life. Don't dance small. Don't let the world flatten you. When the universe sings who we are, the universe is not measuring our future accomplishments or our failings, but is singing about what an incredible gift we are to the world, just by our being. And I want you to believe in that, and I want you to have confidence in that. And I want you to pass that confidence on to another person. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply kindness. The Dalai Lama said, "Be kind whenever possible." And he added, "It is always possible." Plato said, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." And most of all, I pray for you a passionate yearning for justice, for love, and for joy. Polly is going to lead us in our closing hymn. It's an insert in your order of service called Stand. That's a nice cat.
I will say you stand, will you stand with me?
Our chalice light goes out, and with it, our particular obligation increases to carry our light into the world, to come out against all the world's injustices, and always to stand together on the side of love.
Unitarian minister and chaplain Edward Everett Hale said these words, "I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do." And I leave you with this charge from the Christian apostle Paul, who is understood to have said, "Go out into the world in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good, return no one evil for evil, but strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering, honor all people." And let us begin this work together by extending a greeting to someone around you, in particular, someone whom you do not know well.
Good morning. Good morning.